Anyways, my question is, you stress murdering babies a lot, but when it comes to murdering babies, kids, and everything in everyday shootings that keep happening, you say nothing. So I ask, why is it okay to murder babies when it's regulating women but not regulating guns?
You want to get me a bill, you want to elect me to office and get a bill in front of me that will crack down on gang crime and these gangsters using handguns to kill kids? Let's do it. I'd sign that in 2 seconds. So that would seem to be a more pressing issue, but I brought it up.
Hello everyone, I have a video from Michael where he faces a confrontation with a particular student, and the way it plays out and concludes is truly surprising. I'll be sharing my thoughts as we go. Now, let's jump in and watch.
You keep defining abortion as the murder of babies, which biological fact is you would say most abortions are done before they are actually babies. It's still just a fetus. So my
question...
Do you
know what the word fetus means?
It's just a cluster, a
that's
zygote developing
into
means. A baby eventually.
The word fetus, it's a Latin word, and it just means offspring. That's all it means. It just means the next generation of a being. So, but that's what a baby is also. I mean, that's what you would call your adult child someday once he's grown, hopefully, if he hasn't been murdered.
Can I ask my question?
Well, I'd just like to clarify this point. You would call your adult child your offspring too, but all of these terms that you might use, fetus, embryo, the one they love is zygote, which sounds like a Pokemon, but they use all these different terms, but it's all referring to the same being, and you were that being once. You, the person who's standing here right now.
Do any of us have a memory of being that being?
No, I mean, I don't have a memory of last Thursday, frankly. It's been a very busy week, but the lack of a memory doesn't mean that it's all right to murder me.
Well, anyways, my question is, you stress murdering babies a lot, but when it comes to murdering babies, kids, and everything in everyday shootings that keep happening, you say nothing. So I ask, why is it okay to murder babies when it's regulating women but not regulating guns?
No, I say quite a lot about that, actually. I think the crime is a terrible problem, and I think it's just awful that liberals have funded and intentionally installed liberal DAs who won't prosecute violent criminals. This has led to an increase in violent crime, and it's awful. I totally oppose that. But it's not me, and it's not my side that's funding that sort of thing. Now, you say, why wouldn't I want to regulate guns? Guns are very regulated in the United States as it is, and I've yet to hear one gun control proposal that would stop any of these shooting incidents that people talk about. People focus on the sensationalized ones from the news, a school shooting or a movie theater shooting. No proposed gun control legislation of the last 30 years would have stopped any of those. And the majority of the shootings are gang-related, and they're handgun shootings. And so I'm all for cracking down on those gangs and throwing them all in the can, but it's usually the liberals telling me that we have to abolish the police and go soft on crime, and they were just failed by society, and so we can't put them in prison, and we have to abolish the prisons too. That's not me. I'm all for it. You want to get me a bill, you want to elect me to office and get a bill in front of me that will crack down on gang crime and these gangsters using handguns to kill kids? Let's do it. I'd sign that in 2 seconds. But it's not up to me, unfortunately. It's up to the side that I suspect you would consider yourself to be on.
What's particularly frustrating is that, in theory, colleges should be a place where young adults are exposed to a wide range of ideas, perspectives, and critical thinking skills. It should challenge them to question assumptions, engage with complex issues, and develop the tools they need to think deeply and analytically about the world, right? But however, instead of cultivating that kind of intellectual growth, ladies and gentlemen, many students, they are being taught to accept surface level information and trendy ideologies. Can you imagine? They are being taught to accept trendy ideologies without fully understanding or critically evaluating the concepts behind them. Because their education nowadays often feels more like a series of rehearsed responses and ideas they have been taught to adopt. Literally, when you hear them speak, literally, it's as if it's a rehearsed series of ideas coming from a script or something. Can you imagine?
No, it's up to a side that you're often a part of. And even if it's not you specifically, it's your friends and the people you support that just continue to, like, it's just, you aren't considering both sides and how, like, saying one thing can just contradict the other thing.
How do you think I've done that?
By saying you're murdering babies, blah, 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 just over and over again, but just not mentioning any of the babies being murdered every single day in shootings that haven't even made it to major news outlets because they're so common.
No, well, that wouldn't be a contradiction or a hypocrisy or anything. I'm focusing on one particular issue called abortion, but I actually mentioned in the speech tonight that specifically on the issue of black people being murdered, 10,000 black people are murdered every year with guns and knives and hammers and the like, but 242,000 black people at the very least are murdered through abortion. So that would seem to be a more pressing issue, but I brought it up. I'm all for trying to reduce the murder rate. Unfortunately, liberal DAs are not allowing us to do that. So you're more than welcome to convince your fellow liberals to stop funding these people and to start arresting criminals. But my side of the political aisle has been arguing to arrest and keep those criminals locked up for a very long time. And so there's very little we can do if the other side of the aisle won't work with us.
When America had religion in public schools, many people didn't even lock their doors. This country was founded on and run by overwhelmingly Judeo-Christian values. But over time, few people have adhered to those values and more people identifying now as either atheist or following a different religion. Observing that before people felt enough and crime was low enough that locks weren't even needed. But now, where locks are required, doesn't really take a large leap of logic to figure out why. Point is, when a society rejects God, everything turns into chaos. Everything turns into chaos, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah.
A trans woman being in a female prison.
Yeah, that's fine.
They are women.
They have that in Orange is the New Black, don't they?
Yeah, they are women. They would the amount of abuse and violence that they would face in a men's only prison. That is, it's basically just suggesting like you are not actually a woman, you are a man. They are women. Yeah. They are more women than I am.
Still a woman.
You know?
Hi, we're at Sussex University. What are your pronouns?
She, her.
What age should someone be allowed to socially transition?
Oh, this. I'm sorry.
Was it something I said? What are your pronouns?
She, they?
I don't actually have a clue. What does she, they mean?
I don't know, to be honest. I'm just not entirely comfortable with the she, her pronouns, but also I don't feel like asking people to call me they, them, so it's just easier.
What age should someone be allowed to socially transition?
18? Well, socially. Any age they want.
So, for example, 8-year-old boy starts running around in girls' clothes, identifying as female, maybe even asked to be called Jane, for example. Is that okay?
I think so, yeah.
And what age should someone be allowed to start transitioning medically? What age should they be allowed to get surgery?
I think that should be between them and their doctor for the most part, because everyone has a different life situation, everyone matures at a different rate.
But what age? Would an 8-year-old be allowed to do that should an 8-year-old or 10 or even 11 or 12-year-old be allowed to do that with a doctor?
Hormonally speaking, 8-year-old boys and girls are essentially the same. So at that age, I think they can put in hormone blockers to reduce the rate of puberty at that age. I don't know too much about it.
No, that's fine. So I'm learning as I go. You mentioned puberty blockers, so stopping the developmental path to allow them to decide. So an 8-year-old could go on puberty blockers, for example, to then go on to decide later.
Yeah.
Would you be okay with that?
I would, yeah.
What about trans women, so biological men, is that correct? Trans women being in female safe spaces?
Yeah, I'm perfectly comfortable with that.
It seems to be a large part of the feminist movement that fought very hard for years for whatever they thought was important, and of course most decent people would support that. So how do you feel about, for example, taking the extreme, i.e. socially in bathrooms, to trans women in prisons, in female prisons, for example? Should they be allowed in female prisons?
I think so, yeah.
Why?
Because they're women.
What about the feminist argument that say that that's not true?
Well,
and
that's not intersectional feminism. Intersectional feminism is accepting everyone, male, female, whoever, we are all equal.
Okay, fantastic. And you said your pronouns are she, they?
Yes.
can you define what a woman is? I'm learning as I go with the pronouns, sorry.
A person that identifies as a woman, I suppose.
So when you say identifies, do you mean feels? I.e., so for example, you can clearly see I'm a male.
Yeah.
Hope so anyway. If I wake up tomorrow morning and want to identify as a woman, can I do that?
Yes.
And that would make me a woman.
Yes.
What are your pronouns?
She, her. She, her.
She, they.
What does she, they mean?
It means that I can go in between the gender spectrum. I usually use she, her pronouns, but I don't really care for certain stereotypes within gender, so I can fluctuate between more masculine and feminine aspects of my personality.
Okay, understood. And we're learning a lot more about this. Do I present as a male? Would that be fair to say?
Yeah.
Right? And that's not judgmental. I would be perceived as a male.
Yeah.
What defines a woman? Based on what you've just said, we're curious to know what defines a woman.
I think that, woman is a gender, the female is the sex. I think a woman is an individual that presents themselves as a very strong and proud person, someone that is very independent.
One second. Hiya. Would you like to join the interview?
I don't fancy it.
What, me or it? Do you have any thoughts on men being in public bathrooms or sports? Should that be allowed?
What do you mean about men shouldn't be allowed in female bathrooms?
Yeah, the feminist movement that says they fought for what they fought for.
People with they them pronouns being in a girl's toilet or something
Anyone. So a trans woman is a biological male. Is that correct?
They're cis male, but they are a woman. They are a woman, a trans person.
I mean, this debate is you never know where to draw the line. You never know how far it is. If someone's transitioning from male to female, but they make no effort to transition. They've got a beard, they don't shave their beard, they still wear boys' clothes or something. If they made no effort to transition, but they just say they're a female, then it's what do you think about that? It's I think people are sometimes a little bit too open, and then it's just.
I don't think that is necessarily anyone's business for how someone.
I think it is complicated. That's what I'm saying because
it's so hard to know where to draw the line and where's
There's more cisgender straight males that cause conflict in the world than transgender people. I'm sorry, they are the most respectful people I've ever met in my entire life, and I have such the utmost respect and care for all my friends who are trans, and they should be able to fit in this world that they feel respected in. And
that's just good manners, though. I'm talking about that's just good manners, isn't it? You and I were brought up with good manners, hopefully.
I grew up in a very conservative, I grew up in Southeast Asia, and it's extremely conservative, so these kinds of topics are not spoken about or cared about. It's illegal to be gay. You get more time in prison for having gay sex than you would for homicide.
Which country is that?
Myanmar.
So you've seen that side of it in Asia. Yeah. Okay, so in terms of that last question, so trans women, so biological men in women's spaces and prisons, for example, should that be allowed or should that not be allowed? Should they be in a male prison rather than a woman's prison?
A trans woman should never be put in a male prison. Absolutely not.
Yeah, it's really dangerous for them.
Not. They are fetishized and they are.
Were you asking about trans women or
trans women being in a female prison?
Yeah, that's fine.
They are women.
They have that in Orange Is the New Black, don't they?
Yeah, they are women. They would the amount of abuse and violence that they would face in a men's only prison. That is. It's basically just suggesting you are not actually a woman. You are a man. They are women. They are more women than I am.
Still a woman, because if you're just...
They're more women than you are?
Yeah, 100%.
What are you... Okay.
If you put them in a male prison, it's just you're not just because they're biologically... Wait, what was it?
So...
transitioning to a woman?
Yeah, trans woman, so
biologically
biological male.
And you put them in a prison, you're not just offending them. It's not just putting them in that box. You're putting every single transitioning person into that box. If that makes sense.
Really need to get our train.
No worries, you've been most generous. Thank you so much, guys.
That's the problem with a lot of kids nowadays. They tend to form their opinions based on far left. That's the problem with a lot of kids nowadays. They tend to form their opinions based on far left media and liberal ideology without fully considering a wide range of perspectives or even critically analyzing the information they are exposed to. It's alarming how many young people today are heavily influenced by media outlets. It's very shocking, ladies and gentlemen. Social media platforms and ideologies that often promote a one-sided narrative. How sad is that? Rather than encouraging independent thought, these sources frequently present a narrow, filtered version of reality. And ultimately, many kids are observing these messages without questioning their accuracy or even motives. How sad. How sad. More far-left media outlets and the dominant liberal narrative often rely on emotionally charged rhetoric to appeal to the feelings rather than the logic of young people. And that is sad. These platforms, they tend to exaggerate or Moreover, far-left media outlets and the dominant liberal narrative often rely on emotionally charged rhetoric to appeal to the feelings rather than to the logic of young people. Moreover, far-left media outlets and the dominant liberal narrative often rely on emotionally charged rhetoric to appeal to the feelings rather than the logic of young people. How sad. It's like they're saying, throw away common sense and use your feelings. How sad. These platforms, they tend to exaggerate issues to capture attention, making it all about feelings without driving into the full context or providing, neutral arguments. They don't do that. Instead, they foster a deeper understanding that is all biased. It's all brainwashing. These outlets, they prioritize sound bites and quick judgments. That's all they do, making it easy for kids to form opinions that feel valid at the moment but lack substance or depth. It's crazy, ladies and gentlemen. The world we now live in is crazy. In summary, preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ is an incredibly worthwhile mission. It brings about transformation, fosters love, justice, hope, truth, and fulfills God's command. It grants eternal significance, ladies and gentlemen, and deep joy to those who embrace it. Ultimately, it's the greatest gift we can offer. You see, bringing lasting change to individuals and communities alike, and reflecting God's love and purpose for the world. So, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to click on the next one, and don't forget to like, to comment, and to subscribe. I will see you next time. Bye bye for now.